Israel is losing support here in the United States, even amongst Republicans. You go back to 2022, two thumbs up for Israel amongst young Republicans. But by 2025, look at this. Already a 30-point shift away, their net favorability down to -2. Today, look at this, minus 16 points. And now the net favorability of Israel amongst all adults, minus 23 points. That's a 36-point change in just 4 years' time amongst all adults.
Well, as you just saw Harry Enton from CNN display very clearly, well, Americans across the board have lost support toward Israel. And you would think that this would lead to Israel's most ardent defenders maybe doing some self-reflection, maybe urging Israel to reconsider some of the slaughter campaigns they've carried out in multiple countries in the Middle East and beyond. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening here, okay? That self-reflection, taking personal responsibility, not really something that's seen or common among Zionists. And I want to show you a few examples of what I'm talking about. For example, Victor Davis Hanson, who's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute and has a podcast of some sort. Now, he chided Megyn Kelly recently over her criticism of Israel, but wait till you see why he thinks that Megyn Kelly has had a change of heart when it comes to the Zionist project. Take a look.
She was very supportive of Israel and very critical of the Palestinians. And Tucker was not so much so, but he wasn't as critical of Israel and Trump as he is now. Candace Owens had already gone off the deep end. What changed was not the actual realities, but world opinion and the propaganda of all the rubble in Gaza and in Beirut, and none of the reasons of the causation for it, and the mood on the campuses in the United States, and the democratic radicalism with Mondami, and then we've got all of these socialist governors coming in, and the Democratic Party changed, and it became cool, or it became the status quo for the left and the center to try to excuse the United States. Not that they didn't criticize Trump. They said he's a fool and he's stupid, but he was hoodwinked by this Jewish guy who's clever and diabolical.
Nobody said that. Nobody said that Trump was hoodwinked by this Jewish guy. No one said that. In fact, the New York Times piece that Davis Hanson is referring to, which relied on a leak very likely from Vice President J.D. Vance, who understands the toxicity of being associated with a devastating and disastrous war against Iran, indicates that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of a foreign country who has been lusting for war with Iran for literally decades, lied to Trump about the ease in which the Iranian regime would be toppled, and Trump stupidly took his advice and went for it. There's no discussion about the Jews, okay? No one said that, ooh, the manipulative Jews did this. But of course, like all Zionists, Victor Davis Hanson refuses to look at the fact that the reality has changed for a lot of Americans who have witnessed a genocide in 4K over 2.5 years, who have seen Israel mock the United States in consistently talking about how much control they have over our government. Netanyahu just bragged about it yesterday, literally. What did Netanyahu say yesterday? That during the talks with the Iranians this past weekend, J.D. Vance immediately called him to brief him on the talks, right? Yeah. So the rubble in Gaza that he referred to, oh, it's propaganda. No, they leveled Gaza. 80% of all residential homes weren't just damaged, they were demolished. The rest were damaged, but 80% gone, leveled, finished. Entire families were wiped out. Israel blocked humanitarian aid into Gaza for 3 months straight on purpose. The Euromed Monitor just came out with additional reporting about the systematic sexual torture that's carried out against Palestinian hostages in Israeli prisons. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want to address even one of those points? No, of course not. Oh, they just hate Israel because they're anti-Semitic. They hate the Jews. Okay, for the narcissists out there who are so obsessed with their delusions about how everyone hates them for no reason at all, please, for the love of God, take a look at your behavior. Please, I'm begging you. Because unlike Zionists, most human beings value human life and they don't like to see children slaughtered. So when they speak out against children being slaughtered, that isn't about speaking out against the Jews. It's about speaking out against a government and military that continuously engages in these types of violent, destructive, destabilizing military campaigns and drags the United States into it every time. That's the reality. That's the reality. And what he had to say there reminded me a lot of the delusional commentary in the aftermath of the Dave Smith, Douglas Murray debate on the Rogan podcast. In fact, why don't we check in with what Sam Harris had to say about his buddy, Douglas Murray, who's literally working for the Israeli government. So that should have been disclosed by Murray during the debate. It wasn't, but we found out later. Anyway, here's what Sam Harris had to say about it.
Douglas was great. I think I might disagree with a couple of things he said, and I think I might have taken a slightly different line in that conversation. But in many respects, he was much better than I would have been in having that conversation too. So there's just I thought he was spectacular. I looked at the comments, and
Right.
I mean, at that time, maybe things have changed. I can't imagine, but it was 100%. I mean, not even 99%, 100% against Douglas. Right? Douglas was just a pompous, just arguing from authority. There's no value in what he said. I can't believe Joe even had him on. Dave Smith's a genius, right? I mean, that was the center of narrative gravity there. Obviously, all of that is completely delusional and symptomatic of the problem that we have in our culture and the problem that Joe has created for himself over there with his immense audience, right? I mean, and Joe has cultivated that audience.
Yes. The real problem isn't the genocide in Gaza, the brutality carried out by the IDF, not just in Gaza, but in multiple neighboring countries. The problem is the audience. The audience is just too stupid to understand the genius of Douglas Murray's amazing arguments. And when it comes to the audience's reaction to Douglas Murray's brilliant argumentation, it's because of that pesky Joe Rogan who's just propagandizing people to reject bad arguments, because Douglas Murray made terrible arguments, but nonetheless, rather than addressing those terrible arguments, rather than living in reality like the rest of us who saw that exchange and saw how bad that debate was for Douglas Murray, Sam Harris is gonna blame the podcasters. In this case, Joe Rogan. Take a look.
When Douglas was trying to perform an intervention on him, pointing out the obvious fact that he has played footsie with some very dangerous conspiracy theories. He has had people like Daryl Cooper on the podcast and not had the searching conversation that was ethically necessary in the aftermath of Daryl Cooper's appearance on Tucker Carlson. He didn't, he can use the phrase sunlight is the best disinfectant, and perhaps it is, but he brought none of it to that conversation. And he brings none of it to any conversation where he hasn't done his homework in advance so as to detect the lies and the delusions of his guests.
Listen, homeboy, the only one who's delusional here, the only one who's lying here is you, Sam Harris. Okay, because his friend Douglas Murray was actually far more interested in debating about the credibility of Dave Smith as opposed to debating the substance of the arguments Dave Smith was bringing forth in regard to Israel and what it had carried out in Gaza at the time. That's the reality. And if you don't believe me, here's a little taste, a little reminder.
I got 4-star General Wesley Clark, Supreme Commander of the NATO forces. Why is it that he told me that he saw the plans in 2001 to overthrow Gaddafi, and that this was part of a strategy to overthrow 7 governments in 5 years, and all of them except one have been done at this point?
It's nice to hear the N word again.
The N word? Did I say that?
Conservatives.
Oh, that one.
And then you say that the people who are doing it are these people with Jewish names. I think you should be more judicious than that, because you probably know what bubbles up underneath you online by now. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay.
It's a sort of normal, it's a normal thing to do. You're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I think this is a non-argument. I don't understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
No, it was a non-argument for sure. And Douglas Murray never hesitates at engaging in commentary about countries he's never been to. Iran happens to be one of them. Hey, Douglas, go visit Iran. I mean, if you want to stick to your fast and steady rule of avoiding any commentary about a country you haven't been to, then either you should shut up or you should visit Iran. But anyway, similar nonsense was uttered by the likes of Brian Kilmeade over at Fox News, who seemed to really want to rewrite history, but the facts are the facts. So what you're about to hear is Kilmeade demonstrating why conservative boomers are really the only people who watch that cable news channel. Take a look.
And then you listen to some of the most popular podcasts, which I like. And they don't pretend in many cases to be a source of news, but a lot of it are so popular they become just that. I'll give you an example. Joe Rogan talking about the genesis of our problems with Iran. And he went on to say that in the 50s we overthrew a democratic government and put in Islamic extremists, and that he looked at Gemini in Live Time, an hour and a half later, he said, well, that didn't happen. But for the people who listen in the beginning, it did happen, Lydia.
It's all about the severity of the accusation. Even if you roll it back months later, it kind of doesn't matter.
All right, well, 2 morons, certainly propagandists who are spreading disinformation. The fact of the matter is the United States absolutely orchestrated a coup to overthrow a democratically elected leader in Iran in 1953. This isn't a secret. This isn't a conspiracy. This is reality. All you have to do is, I don't know, read and not just watch TV and absorb propaganda Zionist garbage, which is what Fox News' whole existence is about. So Mohammad Mossadegh was democratically elected. He wanted to nationalize Iran's oil. The United States had a fit about that and decided to overthrow him and install the Shah. And the Shah was a puppet of, the West, the United States and Israel in particular, of course. And that was a brutal authoritarian situation, despite all the Iranian women in miniskirts that the, Zionist Iranian diaspora likes to shove in our faces to show how free the people of Iran were back in the day. They weren't free. There were secret police known as Savak, and they terrorized people. There was mass surveillance. It was incredibly authoritarian, which is why there was popular support for the revolution that occurred later in the 1970s. But one must wonder what Iran would have looked like if, the United States didn't overthrow a democratically elected leader. But let's get back to the topic at hand, because I'd like to help the copium merchants maybe touch base with reality a little bit, maybe help them understand why Israel has lost so much support among Americans almost across the board. Really, older conservatives are the only ones who still support Israel. And they don't represent the majority of Americans, not by a long shot. And so if they want to know why that lack of support is now trending, it could be because of this reason. Here's one of the reasons. There's many, but I want to provide one. This was reported by Haaretz, an Israeli paper. A Palestinian family reported settler attacks and then ended up in jail. That's because the Israelis back the extremist Israeli settlers who keep stealing land and homes in the West Bank. So when these poor Palestinians thought it would be a good idea to report the settlers, they were punished instead. But that's a smaller thing. Let me give you more. Here's a recent post from Palestinian poet Omar Hamad. And we had to blur it because of YouTube's guidelines. But on the right-hand side, you'll see a photo, and you could look it up on X if you'd like to yourselves. It's a photo of human body parts in plastic bags in Gaza. It represents 70 bodies, 70 individuals who were bombed to smithereens by the Israelis. Yeah. And here's what he says about it. 1.5 years has passed, and this scene is still etched in my mind. It's haunting me. How those plastic bags were distributed, how a bag weighing 20 kilograms was labeled as a child, and a 70-kilogram bag was labeled as a man. It stuck in my mind how flesh was mingled with flesh and packed away. It's haunting me that 70 human beings had their bodies turned into pieces of minced meat. Israel is the greatest evil in existence. Yeah, it turns out actions have consequences. When you do stuff like that, people turn against you. Shocking. Wow, what a surprise. What a surprise. So people have turned on Israel because it's hard to find. It's not hard, actually. It's not hard at all to find videos of IDF soldiers who openly brag about slaughtering children and innocent civilians. I'll give you one example, and this is just one, but there's many others. Take a look.
Do you like killing Palestinian children?
Yes.
Does it make you feel good when you bomb a hospital? Really?
Yes.
You guys killed children in Lebanon. Is that okay?
Yeah, this is okay because in Hamas.
What about the children, the babies?
The babies is good to kill.
Really? In Lebanon?
Yes, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Iran.
Really? It's okay to kill babies in Iran?
Yes.
And in Gaza?
Yes.
And in Lebanon?
Yes.
You really believe that?
Yes.
Really? Have you ever killed any Palestinians?
I killed.
Have you ever killed any Palestinian children?
I killed.
How many?
I don't know.
You don't keep track?
No, but I killed.
But you've killed Palestinian children?
Yes.
But according to the Zionists, Americans have lost support for Israel because what? They're suddenly all haters of Jewish people? Or could it be that we've all witnessed this stuff with our own two eyes? We've heard the wailing of mothers who lost their children with our own ears. We see it every day. It's inescapable. There's more. Israel has consistently blocked humanitarian aid from reaching the Palestinians in Gaza. In fact, they blocked humanitarian aid from entering for 3 months straight. The IDF is currently occupying 54% of the Gaza territory, while land continues to also get stolen in other parts, belonging to other countries and the Palestinians, for instance, the West Bank, as I talked about earlier, where Hamas, by the way, does not operate, but it doesn't matter. They don't even have to use an excuse when it comes to the West Bank. They're just doing it, and no one is pushing back. No one is pushing back in the international community. By the way, the whole notion of international law is now a joke. IDF soldiers slaughtered Palestinians as they lined up for food, humanitarian aid in Gaza. And in fact, the latest whistleblower to blow the whistle on that is David McIntosh, who worked for the GHF, that was the organization distributing humanitarian aid, when in reality, they were lining Palestinians up to shoot and kill them. He said that the soldiers, IDF soldiers, would use deadly force on people who posed no threat, including one incident where he personally witnessed a 12-year-old boy getting shot. Israel currently carpet bombed, or recently, I should say, carpet bombed Lebanon, dropping over 100 bombs in a 10-minute span. How are you going to argue that you're targeting Hezbollah when you're carpet bombing? They've announced that they're going to annex southern Lebanon, keep it for themselves, settle that land, of course. That's 10% of Lebanon, stolen by the Israelis. Gee, are we allowed to comment on how we hate that and how we think that's wrong? Or does that make us Jew haters? There's more. There's a growing body of evidence showing that Israel is intentionally targeting medical workers, rescue workers, and hospitals. Obviously, they did a lot of that in Gaza. Now they're doing it in Lebanon, of course. And French lawmakers are considering a bill that would land critics of Israel in prison for up to 5 years. I'm not kidding. If the French don't riot over this, then you guys have totally lost your spirit, because you usually protest and riot over less. Okay, I'm just keeping it real. But I want to share what I posted about this last night. So Middle East Eye had done some coverage of this bill, saying that French lawmakers set to push bill criminalizing speech on Israel with penalties of up to 5 years in prison. I used an excerpt from the article where they write that the bill introduces sweeping new offenses. It criminalizes denying Israel's existence, while no law criminalizes denying France's right to exist. Also outlaws comparisons between Israel and Nazi Germany, as Israel, by the way, behaves like Nazi Germany. Yeah, I did it. They're like Nazi Germany. So we've seen hundreds of people arrested in the UK over their restrictive policies on criticism toward Israel. And people's livelihoods have been destroyed here in the United States by various Zionist groups viciously and persistently attacking critics of Israel and demanding that their employers fire them. So you tell me, when your livelihood is destroyed because you dare speak out against atrocities committed by the Israeli government and military, do you think that's going to make you like Israel? Or is it going to make you loathe Israel? Just a question I'd like to pose to all the various people that I played videos of in this segment. How about you actually address the atrocities for once? Other than that, how about shut up? Because you have nothing of substance to offer people when all you do is smear individuals who have a conscience as anti-Semites. You're the bad people, not us. There was one individual that I want to give a lot of credit to, and that individual is actually Harry Enton, because the video that he posted today showing how Israel has lost support actually gets into the reasons why. And it's so rare to see this, especially in legacy media, that I think he does deserve credit for it. We can't show you the entire video, but we do want to show you at least a portion of it so you get a sense of the analysis he did and how much I respect the fact that he did this analysis in the first place. Take a look.
This is a change. Who Americans sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Back in 2022, before the October 7th attacks, it was the Israelis by 28 points. That would even climb into the 40s, 50s, depending on which polling you looked at in terms of who Americans sympathize with. The margin very much on the side of Israel. But look at where we are now. In 2026, Americans sympathize more with the Palestinians by an 11-point margin. That is a shift of nearly 40 points in just 4 years' time. And when you compare it to 2023, after the October 7th attacks, we're talking about what, a 50, 60 point change? My goodness gracious. But it is not just the Israelis and the Palestinian conflict in which why we're seeing these shifts among all these different groups. And overall as well. It is because of the man who right now is the prime minister, the longtime prime minister of Israel. In early 2024, he was on the plus side of the ledger at plus 9 points. But look now, minus 23 points. Again, an over 30-point shift.
So he gets into even more detail in the video, and he talks about how there was a sea change following Israel's atrocities in Gaza. My point is that Harry Enton decided to look at the facts. Rather than smear the American people as disgusting anti-Semites, and by the way, he's Jewish himself, right? Instead, he decided to look into why this is happening in the first place. And that is what you're supposed to do. Live in reality, analyze trends in public opinion based in reality. Because if all you're gonna do is smear people as anti-Semites and never contend with why it is that Americans are so critical of Israel these days, then all you're doing is excusing Israel's brutality, inhumanity, genocide. You're emboldening them to do more of it. And I don't think people are gonna like where that ends. So they're not doing Israel any favors, to be clear. Anyway, big shout out to Harry Enton. I really, really appreciate the fact that he covered the polling, which I think is important to know about. But on top of that, actually took some time and effort to explain to Americans why this is happening.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.